Welcome, my friends, to Doceo, the podcast where we learn all about extension and some of the work that we're doing here in the field. We got amazing guests today. I'm recording from Greeley, and we got on the phone Toby Swaford from the 4-H state office. He serves as a state specialist in STEM. Welcome, Toby.
Well, thanks, Patrick. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and we've got a great show for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about 4-H, and that's why I've got Toby in the podcast room, or I guess he's over in Fort Collins. I'm here in Greeley, and we're going to talk about 4-H. And just a brief, 5,000 picture overview. We're going to go over the history of 4-H. Then we're going to talk about the relevance of 4-H and why it's important for the nation and for the youth. And then we're going to kind of talk about the future as well, where 4-H is headed. And I think we've got a wonderful podcast in store for you guys. So let's get started here. So everyone, thank you for Toby Swaford being here. All right. Okay. So, Toby, what I've got here, I've read a few articles. I read one that is called "The First 50 Years of the 4-H Program," written in the Joe, and it's by Beth Van Horn, and she's a county extension director, and a few other professors like Constance Flanagan and Joan Thompson, and they did a brief history of the first 50 years of 4-H. And she says, quote, digging into the roots of 4-H program reveals how the organization has both remained the same but also changed during the past 80 years. So, going from our roots, but also looking forward, let's talk a little bit of the roots of where we've come from, where 4-H is from. And why don't you go ahead and tell us, Toby, something about the corn clubs or something that happened in the early 1900s?
We're going way back. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Looking at the first 50 years, that's really only looking at half of the story, because we are over 100 years old. And our roots really got started back in the late 1800s, and they were based on efforts of professionals at various universities to get scientifically accurate, research-based information into the hands of farmers and people working in agriculture. And some of that information was met with some resistance to change, or are moving away from the way that their parents had farmed and that they were used to farming. And so out of that, someone came up with the idea of creating different types of clubs. There were tomato clubs, there were corn clubs, there were cattle clubs, and they were all really started to provide youth with the information and the updated techniques, with the idea that if the youth started using those to raise their crops, the parents, who were the original target audience, would start to see some of the benefit of utilizing those new techniques. And it worked. That was our very beginning as kind of a way of getting the information out to a specific target audience by actually going through the youth and working with the youth so that they could become the teachers and the experts and then share that with their families. So that was late 1800s, early 1900s. The 4-H model really started appearing around 1910 when the clover pin was introduced, and it was a clover that had the H's on it. There were 4 of those, representing head, heart, hands, and health. And by 1912, all of these various ag-based and home economic clubs started to fall under what was being referred to as the 4-H club. And then a few years later, from 1912 to 1914, that's when the Smith-Lever Act was created. And that was really the beginnings of the cooperative education system, which was run through the USDA. And through that, we created the 4-H Club as we kind of know it today, with a lot of growth over the last several hundred years. So cooperative education and extension, that's through a partnership with NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. And the extension program is part of the Smith-Lever Act, wherein the somewhat over 100 land-grant universities have extension programs within the various states they're located in. So, for example, here in Colorado, we have over 60 extension offices throughout Colorado in the majority of the counties. And there are actually over 3,000 extension offices nationwide. That's a lot
incredible.
Of information to cover. How was that for the first 50 years?
Oh, that's incredible. So tell me, are there still corn clubs out there? Are we still providing youth with corn clubs, or what kind of activities are the youth doing today? And what kind of projects are they interested in?
Yeah, there a lot has changed since the early 1900s. And while our roots are definitely in agriculture, and it's the association a lot of people make with 4-H. I've been asked several times when I tell people what I do, that I work with 4-H. Don't you have to have a cow to be in that, or a horse?
I've heard that many times.
Yeah, and that is still that is so key to our mission, and the programming we offer. But it has expanded beyond that. That area of just focus in agriculture, and my particular job is as a STEM educator. And when we look at the 4-H clover, a lot of people will focus on those clover leaves, and the H's and what they stand for. And one of the things I always like to point out is that even though that wasn't the original intent of that design, that clover with those leaves, the whole thing is held up by a STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and math have always been part of what we do in 4-H. We're one of the original STEM programs before that acronym even existed.
And that kind of makes sense that since the youth were working with, they were given plots of land, and they were performing agricultural practices that were trying to advance or help, make it more efficient or advance, and they were given kinds of ways to make it even better. And
absolutely,
and so that's how they got kind of as a way to reach to the parents as well. And here in this article, it's interesting. I love that stem that you talked about, the stem of the clover, because I think STEM was definitely kind of involved in the very beginnings, because they were kind of using these new technologies and new things that were advancements that were helping out, for the adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes through to today, where, some of the project areas, we have areas where the youth in the 4-H are learning about food security. They're learning about, climate change and how that's going to affect the different farming techniques that are utilized. They're looking at things like sustainable energy. They're looking at how what they're learning is related to those different ages, including health, where they're looking at food safety and issues like childhood obesity. All of these areas basically relate to the STEM education opportunities, and they tie directly back into the agriculture and animal sciences, which, some of the new techniques involve coding and robotics and automation, and environmental protection. So yeah, even though it has changed since our beginnings, um, the mission is still the same,
Yeah,
and it's getting that information out there and showing people how everything is connected. And what we do is so relevant to the youth and their development.
yeah. I've got a quote here that says the 4-H emblem, pledge, and motto focused at that time as well as today on the development and growth of the individual through intellectual experiences, compassion and caring about the community, learning and applying new skills, and living a healthy lifestyle. And you can see all of those, the mind, the heart, hands, and health, all involved in those four that I just mentioned. And they talked about that as the youth program grew and developed, the 4-H mission and purpose became more defined. And I just love how it's broadened the reach to involve not just people from rural areas, but to urban as well. And the focus to reach and be available for all youth is interesting. So one thing I want to go down and ask, okay, Toby, if a kid decides I want to join 4-H, they join 4-H, and then what? What happens? What do they do? And talk about the club work. That is, as this article says, the club work is the foundation of the 4-H program. And then after that, let's talk about how school programs are also a fundamental model in the after school as well.
All right, yeah. So within 4-H, for our younger friends, ages 5 to 7, we have the Clover Bud program, which is a program where our young friends actually come in with a caring adult, a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, and they're learning and working on different projects together. And then as the youth age into the club-based program, which is ages 8 through 18, so about third grade on up through high school. The youth that are involved in 4-H actually select different project areas. So it is a project-based learning opportunity. And those projects range anywhere from some of the agricultural areas we talked about to creative cooks, cake decorating, a variety of STEM areas. Some of my favorites include some of the textile arts and fashion design that incorporate wearable technology. Designing a cake, there's definitely some engineering involved with that. But then we also have areas that are more easily identified or are thought of as being STEM areas, like robotics, computer science, model rocketry. And the youth get to select or choose their own pathway and pick out the different areas that they're interested in. And then the model is very much one that is based on learning by doing. And through their project books and their record books, they are learning to document what they're doing, to keep an eye on their finances, to be able to share with others what they've done. Part of the project area includes doing presentations. Public speaking is one of those skills that is developed throughout the 4-H program. And that is one of the most valuable skills that you can have moving into your later education and career pathways. So yeah, it's all put together with the idea of building the youth and giving them the skills they're going to need in the future, whether that is their own personal growth and development, or you're moving into secondary education or into the workforce. And so yeah, it's a lifetime of learning and working with the youth.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so let's talk about how they're interacting with adults as well, and that's a big part of the mission. They've got community leaders. They work with community engagement and activism in their communities, and they're working a lot with adults, and their parents are involved as well, helping them out with their projects and guiding them and so forth, and as well as the volunteer that leads the club or I guess the youth are leading it with through the different kinds of positions that they can officer positions that they can be part of. So tell me about we're looking to, I guess the essence of trying to help them foster skills for adulthood, but also the relationship with adults. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And the adults in the program, especially the volunteers, are so crucial to the mission, and it's one that we really could not do without them. Currently, within the United States, we're looking at about 6 million 4-H members. But in addition to those youth involved with the program, there are over 500,000 volunteers. And these are people that give up their time, their expertise. Some serve as club leaders, and they help to organize the youth that are in a particular club. And then within the club itself, the youth step into leadership roles, including president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, even sergeant at arms, to help with parliamentary procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So the youth are learning, there's various leadership roles and how to effectively put forward a motion and second that motion, and then put it through debate and then vote upon it. So yeah, they're developing a lot of skills that even we as adults can benefit from, and sometimes we forget about how best to actually get things done. And then we have other volunteers who have content or expertise or experience, and they're willing to come in and share those skills with youth, and they can range anywhere from coding to leather craft, to keeping bees and things along that lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a great partnership between the youth and the adults that they're working with, and they are working side by side so much of the time, because without that partnership, nothing is going to get done, nothing's going to move forward. It gives youth some empowerment, and there's definitely youth voice to what's going on, the project areas they want to pursue. But then as a larger organization, they're working with the adults that are helping them out along that pathway. And so through that, they get to experience working with someone that can serve as a mentor or an adult leader, or in many cases just a friend and someone that can be there. And having that caring adult is so crucial to what we do.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Let's we've kind of touched up on the impact of 4-H and why it's valuable. And I think as any organization goes and kind of tells their story, it's very important to first of all be rooted in the fact and in the history and but also something that gives us hope, that moves kind of the needle in the direction of where we're walking. Someone once told me that you need to know where you are and where you're heading. And so I just wanted to kind of flesh out a little more of the impact that 4-H has on in the world. And because some people might say, they might come back and say, well, that's what a school is for, to develop these skills and things. What kind of makes 4-H unique from a school, and that maybe not necessarily we're not advocating for to abolish school and school's out forever, but maybe something that really benefits and or kind of supplements this education, this, like you said, lifelong learning. And I want to kind of flesh out a little more of the impact, and also compare it to perhaps some of the other organizations. There's so many clubs out there. What makes 4-H special compared to Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, church groups, YMCA, community sports clubs, and other things, even clubs within the schools themselves. And so I came upon this article and It's called Teaching Leadership and Communication Skills and Responsibilities: A Comparison of 4-H with Other Youth Organizations. And this was done some years ago, but they've kind of they did a study. They sent out a flyer to a lot of the past 4-Hers that were involved with 4-H, and the average age of the respondent was 47 years old. So they've gone through the whole 4-H, and they've kind of already did a bunch of part of their working life, and they've kind of are reflecting back. And this study shows that 4-H is more helpful than any other youth organization in teaching skills related to leadership and communication skills and responsibilities. And that's pretty impressive. I mean, to say that 4-H leads the pack of all these organizations is pretty a pretty wow statement. And not only the 6 million that being the largest, but as we'll talk about later, with the strategic plan, they're hoping to get 10 million, and that's quite a bit. And so this study goes into in more focus, and that the members contributed more time and money to charity than other non-members. So they're comparing 4-Hers and non-4-Hers, and so they're saying 76 versus 52 respectively that contribute their money in the community. They also said that 4-H members are more likely to have a conversation with an adult, which is very interesting to be able to have that conversation with an adult. I think is a skill that leads to maturity, I think. And they've compared to different groups, and they are showing debating skills, interpersonal skills, which was one of the highest, as well as developing a sense of personal responsibility was another one of the highest. That skills that they received in addition to the leadership, communication, and learning responsibilities that we discussed before. So they said that 57% of people said that 4-H was more helpful in being a leader than other programs, and whereas it says 12% said that other programs were more helpful in leadership development. So it's pretty impressive. And of course, this study was done 20 years ago. But let's talk about the Tufts study that you know a little bit more about as well.
Absolutely.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of authors. Yeah, our beginnings started as a way of getting that research-based information out there. So, part of what 4-H does, is we live that research. The Tufts study from Tufts University, it was conducted a while ago and is still ongoing. So we're 2 decades worth of research and information coming in. And some of the things that research has shown is, what you were talking about, how 4-H can impact the lives of the youth who are involved in the program.
While
they're in the program, and then afterwards.
Yeah, let's see, they say they're 4 times more likely to make a positive contribution to their communities, 2 times more likely to make healthier choices,